Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast with what I think is going to be a great podcast for you today. Good Saturday to you. Good to talk to you. You know who this guy is. He needs no introduction. He is the one and only, the great Johnny Guitars, decorated journalist, highly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area, and joins us each and every week to look at the NFL from a bird's eye view. Johnny, great to have you. I want to dig in on something that really shocked me. As you know, for several weeks, we've been reporting, I was hearing about Dante Moore returning to Oregon. And the moment it came out, I got a text from an NFL executive that said the Raiders' number one overall pick now becomes the most valuable since Trevor Lawrence. That is a humongous deal. Now, my critics will run off saying, "Oh, Hondo says they're trading the pick," which is just pure stupidity. But what it does do is if somebody wants it who's desperate, desperate people will do desperate things. And it's so valuable now. I still think the Raiders are picking Mendoza and should. But if somebody does something stupid, you have to look at it when you're a roster that has a ton of holes. What do you think about hearing this pick is the most valuable since Trevor?
No, 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 people, no. We did not know this when we talked about this last week. So, for the haters out there that thought I was crazy for suggesting the Raiders need to explore and understand what the value of the pick is, this is what we're talking about. Regardless of whether you take him and he's an 18-year pro or you don't take him for some reason, they have to understand the value of it. So, Moore's decision does change it because thankfully for the prospects of Dante Moore, he's less likely now to be a New York Jet, which is fantastic news for Dante Moore. So now the Raiders are in a position where they need to take the temperature around the sport. Like, who needs a quarterback? You go down the list, you see Arizona needs a quarterback, you see some other teams that do, obviously the Jets, and you wonder what is the value of this. One of the things that we're going to talk about is that, even something as crazy as, do the Rams have any interest in this pick? Thinking way big picture. It's probably too premature to know, but even that has to be a rock that's turned over. So it's not a shock that Moore goes back, but it also is not a shock that the Raiders, there may be nothing out there, but they need to find out. Now, it's ironic that you mentioned that this is the most valuable number one since Trevor Lawrence, because folks here in the city of Atlanta should know and sometimes need to be reminded that Matt Ryan is really the reason they didn't get that number one pick and changed the compass for every team that was operating since. Circling back to the Raiders, I really like the idea of evaluating what the pick is worth. All that's going to do is firm up the decision to take Mendoza. And again, immediately behind it is when the real work needs to be done. And I say that with one major caveat in mind. And everybody out there, they either know this at the front of their mind or they don't know it, but it's in the back of their mind. There's really one opinion that's going to matter most about this. It is Tom Brady. If Tom Brady does not see something in Fernando Mendoza that he wants to see or is blind to it, he may not be into Mendoza as much as the rest of us are. I think the best thing for the Raiders and Mendoza would be a situation on Monday night where they are coming from behind in a tight squeeze and a pinch, and he just pulls them over the goal line to get Indiana the first national title, beyond decades around there in any really major sport. Does Fernando Mendoza have the killer instinct, or is he seen too much as Kirk Cousins the second, combination with Matt Ryan? This is the question. But really, the thing that struck me earlier this week is this is largely going to come down to what Tom Brady thinks. And if he is in, I don't see any reason for the Raiders to hide behind it. I would like to see them say, we're going forward as fast as we can. We're going to address this issue. We're going to get, go into camp with 9 guys that could start for us or play for us on the offensive line. We are going forward. Don't play cutesy too long.
Yeah, I can tell you this, the Raiders have been in on Mendoza. We were the first to report before the season even started that the Raiders were watching Mendoza closely. And I want to make this very, very clear because I laugh. My critics will watch and then do videos criticize me, don't even have the guts to correct me, I mean to correctly quote me. You you look at everything. There's a general manager who you and I both highly respect told me he let his coaches pick his staff, their staff. But every year he sat down with his coaches and asked them about each coach on their staff, saying who all wants them. And if nobody does, why? And he said, there would be times that a coach was older in his, mid 60s. And they're like, okay, they don't want him because of his age. Okay, because he's not going to be there that long. Well, he goes, I had one coach that was best friends with my head coach, and he was a coordinator. And we knew that people weren't coming after him because his agent was telling everybody he doesn't want to leave. He goes, that didn't bother me. But what bothered me, we've got, and I'm going to make a position up. We got a wide receiver coach that's been here 3 years. Our wide receivers are in the 20s, and nobody's trying to get them for other jobs. Why are we not upgrading? And my point is, he said to me when I talked to him the next day and I told him about that text, he told me a story, and I think you know the story I'm going to be alluding to. I don't want to give up his identity, but you're going to know. He said, I remember one time holding a valuable pick that I was nervous about. And he said, but every offer I got told me, no, this guy is what I think he is based on what others are willing to pay. And he goes, I didn't need them to tell me my scouting was accurate, but it certainly reinforced it. My point to you is that I know the Raiders have been looking at Mendoza since before the season started. I think it would take a stupid offer to get the pick, but you still have to listen. At the end of the day, I still think they're making the Mendoza pick, but you have to listen because, hey, Jimmy Johnson once said this. I'll never forget this as long as I live. Because I didn't want to trade Herschel Walker. He's a great running back, and I wanted to run the football. But what I also knew was there's a lot of people willing to pay me to fix a lot of holes in my ship, and I don't got one hole. And I knew I could draft another running back, but I had a bunch of holes. And I knew running with Herschel that year wasn't going to get me to a Super Bowl. I mean, this is part of being smart. You can have a broad net and still be focused.
Yeah, and I'm sure I am very confident that they will be. I would think that the likelihood that this pick is moved is way under 10%, and it would take something out of this world and outstanding. You know what I mean? Really low. And there's so many good reasons for that. I am not here to blow the sunshine and tell you it's all going to get really better really fast, Raiders fans. But I'm telling you, if you take the Raiders logo off the situation, you look at what they've drafted here in recent years, and they have clearly hit on Brock Bowers. It appears they're going to hit on Ashton Jeanty. If they can hit on Fernando Mendoza, all of a sudden the core of your offense is set for a good while. And the likelihood of them hitting is so much higher if they draft nearly nothing else but offensive linemen and sign one or two. If I'm a Raider fan, I want the immediate impact to be compounded and accelerated. And if that means you move Max Crosby, you move Max Crosby. If you can get a pick that will get you enough shots at it. I think the key about offensive line, outside of the guys that are beyond outstanding and can't miss, is how many can you get in that are athletic enough to do what you want to do. We've talked on this show years ago about Bill Parcells talking about linemen, the challenge of it, how to evaluate them, how important they are. They need to overstuff the camp with linemen because to me, if you've got about 9 guys that can play for you, either start or come off the bench, 1 or 2 is going to have a season-ending injury. 1 or 2 is going to have another set of injuries that won't be able to play up. And all of a sudden, you've got a playing group that's of a reasonable size. The only downside to me of taking a guy like Fernando Mendoza for the Raiders at number 1 is if they cannot protect him to the extent that it diminishes and harms his career. That mistake cannot happen, and I would stick a fork in the ground and say it will not happen in Las Vegas. They are going to turn this thing around and get that part of it right.
100% agree with you. Let's talk about the Rams. listen, I think they're a wild card in this draft. And I want to just quickly say this. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Doesn't mean I think they're a lock, but I think they're going to go. But let's talk about it because Matthew Stafford already last year flirted with retirement. We know that they are an aggressive franchise. We know they're a franchise that's willing to trade draft picks. I also don't think though that they're going to want to go with a rookie quarterback. But there's been a lot of talk because of their penchant for not being married to draft picks that they could be there. But I just don't think it works because they're not necessarily a team that's willing to work with rookies.
No, this would be a wild, scenario. When you talk about turning over all the rocks, is it possible? Is it possible that Sean McVay is absolutely in love with Fernando Mendoza? You'd have to have a whole bunch of rocks coming here. The Rams are going to have 2 picks in the first round. One of them is in the teens, I think it's 13. The other one is obviously to be determined. When you think about the Rams next year, whether Stafford comes back or not, pretty safe to say they're probably going to have a high pick. So, do the Rams have enough to even be in the mix? If somebody said, well, basically, if the Rams said, whether Stafford comes back or not, we love Mendoza so much, we are willing to spend out of this world to get in position to get him. 2 first-round picks this year, a first-round pick next year, a second or third this year and next year. Would that be enough for Fernando Mendoza? I don't know, but this is the kind of scenarios that have to get
Not
kicked
even
around.
close.
Not even close. And here's the most recent frame of reference, right, is Jaden Daniels. Remembering what the Washington franchise, they asked for stuff that was out of this world. The Giants couldn't touch it. The Raiders couldn't. Nobody could touch it. So it's just an interesting wrinkle
If
as the
you're
Rams
looking at
go.
the Rams, if you're the Rams, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're the Rams and you want the Raiders pick, it is probably going to cost you 3 1s, 3 2s, and 3 3s. I'm not exaggerating either. It's going to be because you're picking at the bottom, and I don't
You
even
got to.
know that. Now, if you're the Jets, 3 1s, maybe with 3 2s. And I'm saying maybe, or maybe 3 1s and 3 3s. But I don't even think that is because they believe in Mendoza. So if you're going to get this pick from them, you're going to have to way overpay. I'll
That's the
give you a
main
quick
point.
example. I have a buddy who him and his dad owned a Ford Mustang that they had rebuilt together. And they really loved that car and he wanted to keep it forever. And somebody came to him and goes and offered him, I think it was $45,000, which is what the car was worth. And my buddy's like, listen, the car's not for sale. And the guy kept making offers. Finally, the guy said, listen, this is a VIN number. This was my dad's first car. And and you and your dad did a great job restoring it, but it was my dad's first car. And I don't remember the price. I think it was 150,000, 100 grand over what it was worth. And the guy wasn't willing to sell it. And so my point to you is somebody's going to have to way overpay, which is fine. Which is fine. And I think in today's NFL, there are teams that would be willing to do that. I don't think the Rams are a team that be willing to give up what it would take to move from 32 or 28 to 1 at all. And I don't know that the Raiders would even be interested on what they have to offer because it's going to be such low picks.
I
I
understand what
think
you're
you're
saying.
literally talking with somebody in the top 10.
Yeah, and again, the point is, we're talking about how much they would have to overpay for this guy. That's how much I want to see the Raiders overdo it with offensive linemen. Solve that problem through the draft and maybe a little nibble through free agency. All the rest of the stuff can get filled in. If you want this thing to take off on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think it's that far away if you get the protection that you need. There are 2 significant tools in place. If you put the most important tool in place, you got the protection. All of a sudden, there is a future. So, as much as somebody would have to overpay to get this pick from the Raiders, which we don't think is going to happen, most likely, I want to see them overdo it with offensive linemen. I want to see them have a few more than they think they need. Because in reality, when you look at what's going on this weekend, when you look at what's going on with the Eagles this year, how many teams wish they would have had a couple more?
All right, John, I want to. I, the Eagles' offensive coordinator is going to reshape the NFC East, and I think that person can have as equal. I don't think more than, but as equal of an impact as John Harbaugh. Just because of the way Howie Rossman gets talent. I'd like. Am I overstretching it there?
No, for 26 and 27, this decision, I think, is going to reshape the East, the NFC East, more than any. And before you get all cranked out about talking NFC East, folks, as a reminder, a quarter of the Super Bowls have been won by teams in the NFC East. So it's kind of important nearly every year, even when it seems like they're not right there. So we know what the Giants are up to, and we know some of the guys that are going to be joining John Harbaugh. This Eagle thing is a total wild card. It really is. They really did not get much out of what they had this year. And I heard somebody talking earlier this week about, offensive lineman issues aside, what were they doing? Why did they go away from Barkley so much? Why couldn't they get more production out of a roster that's a Super Bowl level? So this is a key time here for Nick Sirianni, isn't it? It's a really key time. He's got to find the right guy. The Eagles have to find the right guy. And I think this is going to have such a big impact. You've got two new coordinators coming to Washington. We don't know who they are yet. You've got some potential tumult in Dallas, but Dallas is a little bit forgotten at the moment. The upstart Giants. So it's not that the Eagles' window is closing, but it's in the process to start to move. And I think one of the major things to watch is who does the new Eagles coordinator keep around? Does he keep Jeff Stoutland there? If he does not, is Jeff Stoutland retired? Is Jeff Stoutland possibly a guy that goes to the Giants or somewhere else in the division? Cliff Kingsbury, for whatever reason, was let go by Washington. Depending on what happens with his head coaching prospects, and I think we can X him out of Arizona, for example, very safely. Is that a guy that comes around? And when you're talking about this stuff, it's now more interesting to me only really in the NFC East and the AFC North. And I don't know why, but is there an advantage to having coordinators that they already know the opposition, they already know the division? So does Kingsbury have an advantage over Mike McDaniel because he's got knowledge of the NFC East, or are the Eagles going to say maybe we don't like this guy as much because we think he might be a little too set in his the ideas of how he wants to attack the teams in the division? Because there is no mistake that they all count one, but division games, they literally mean a little bit more. We've talked about that in years past. They statistically and with tiebreakers and whatnot, they actually mean a little bit more. This is a big move for the Eagles. They have had a run hit a wall and kind of stall out completely. And we all know that in Philadelphia, they're going to be loud about it. They've got to get this thing right. And it's very interesting to see who's going to come in and also what position coaches are going to stay in Philadelphia as you reach kind of a little bit of a crossing roads for Nick Sirianni. What I mean is if the Eagles underachieve next year, I imagine we're going to have a different conversation about the Eagles head coaching situation at this time in 2027.
Yeah, speaking of coaching situations, let's turn our attention to Mike Tomlin. In the interest of full disclosure, and I don't say this braggadociously, I say it because as a journalist, it's important to your audience to, when there's a potential of bias, even if you don't think it's there, that you disclose that to your audience. I'm going to say right up front, I have a great personal affinity for Mike Tomlin. I respect him. I like him. I don't claim to be a friend, but I've known him a long time. And I felt bad for the game of football. I think the game of football is better when Mike Tomlin is involved. I don't think he's going to be on the sidelines forever. I don't think he's done coaching. I want to make all of that very clear. I think whatever team gets Mike Tomlin is going to be extremely fortunate. But this is a guy that fundamentally changed a lot of people's lives. He won a lot. And in a society that's never happy, I think he was able to have a long, sustained career in Pittsburgh for a great organization, a great family ownership group, and tip of the cap to him. I'm going to tell you a great story. I have a lot of friends that have played for him, worked with him. I don't know one person that intimately knows him that dislikes him. Not one. Now, I do know some people that don't like him because they got fired. Because I'm gonna read you a text. Okay, this is from Mike and I share a lot of friends. This is a guy that both of us would consider a top 5 friend. Okay, that's the closeness that Mike and I have on this. This is what he said to me. Sad day, Hondo. Very, very sad day. The thing I loved about Mike and will always love is he never asked anybody for what he didn't give. That tells you a lot. I'm going to say something, John, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but one of the things I love about you as a friend is I know this. I could pick up the phone tomorrow, I don't care what time it was, and you'd answer. And I think you know the same for me. We'd be there for each other. And I just those friends are so rare. Those kind of people are so rare in a profession that's ticky tack, that's sometimes like a bunch of teenage girls. Mike Tomlin was different. I respect him for. I'm gonna share one story. I have to let me think this through real quick because it was a private conversation. I'm just gonna share one thing. Him and I had a very emotional, um, straightforward conversation once in Texas about Antonio Pierce. It was after he had been hired to be the head coach permanently. And it was a long and very, in fact, multiple people came up and said, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, why? That looks spirited." And I go, "Well, it was, but it wasn't an argument. I mean, we were both on the same side. We were just both very involved in the conversation." And the thing that always impressed me about Mike is he never lied to me. And there were times he could have and probably gotten away with it. And he lived by a code. I like people like Tomlin. I call them leaders of men. You know, there are some guys, I'll give you an example. General Colin Powell, and not because they're both black. I remember when General Colin Powell, nobody knew if he was a Republican or Democrat. Just both sides of the aisle loved him, and both sides of the aisle wanted him on their side. Same way with Eisenhower. People didn't know. I heard someone once say that if Eisenhower thought he could have, whatever party he thought he could have ran and won with, he would have done that same way with Powell. I like people that, I always laugh. People assume I'm one way politically or I'm one way politically or whatever. And because I don't want to be a Republican, I don't want to be a Democrat. I want people to say, Hondo's a good human. That's Mike Tomlin. And you can't have too many of those people because we don't have enough, John.
No, we don't. And this is a guy that, it's hard to tell folks that are younger. He kind of came out of nowhere. His interview legend with the Steelers will live forever. It's going to far outlive his
Tomlin.
leg. Yeah, I mean
It's literally become an NFL term. You've been Tomlin interviewing somebody that you don't expect to hire, but they're an up and comer. Maybe you'll think about him as a coordinator or down the road, and it's called being Tomlin.
can't miss. All of a sudden, guys organized, disciplined, clear-headed, clear thought. We know his lineage with Todd Bowles, for example. Some of those guys are cut from a similar cloth. And this is an all-time great NFL coach. He really is. His record of not having a losing season is going to be something that goes forever. His final message to the team is already leaking out. We'll talk about that. It's something that's going to live forever. This is a guy, no way in the world of bias. He's been the guy I respected most and biggest fan of. And I'm not a Steeler fan at all, but I've been a Tomlin fan, since the early days of his career. When it's like, boy, this guy is doing something different. And his ability to evaluate and separate the pieces of a game plan to figure out how do we put ourselves in the best position to compete or win, that's where the track record, where the rubber meets the road, and it's outstanding. You can't look at many Mike Tomlin teams and say, boy, they didn't get a whole lot out of that. No, this is not the Eagles that just had to let their offensive coordinator go because they produced what they produced last week in a wild card game. Not even close. And it's a fair argument to make. Like the Steelers, they were not bad enough to get enough high enough picks to really turn the whole thing over again. And rather than maybe restart the deck, this is probably the right time. You know why you know it's the right time for him to step away? Because he decided to do it. He knows what he's doing. You want to talk about benefit of the doubt? This guy gets all the benefit of any doubt. And I'm with you. I don't know why you doubt the guy. I am concerned. If I'm a Steeler fan, I don't think you have any idea what's coming. Your roster is a lot closer to 4 wins, 6 wins than it is 10 or 12 wins. And you're going to find out real fast with whoever goes in there what kind of situation it is. It looks to me like they're going to have they're going to have a hard fall and a long climb back up.
Last year I had an NFL general manager tell me who isn't the Steelers. It wasn't Omar Khan. Him and I were talking about Tomlin, and he asked me about that conversation that he'd saw me and Tomlin having. And him and I were chatting, and he goes, "You want to know what's amazing?" He goes, "Those people in Pittsburgh mock him. Oh, we have how many Super Bowls?" And he goes, "What I would say to them is, how many teams did he get to the playoffs that shouldn't have been there?"
5 or more.
And yeah, and he just said, he doesn't draft the players, he doesn't pick the players, he doesn't put the roster together, he doesn't control injuries. And anyways, I just here's the whole deal. It goes back to, I'll tell you one of my favorite Mike Tomlin stories. Years ago, and I mean years ago, he is early in his career at Pittsburgh. And he comes to Michigan State to East Lansing for a pro day. And I walk up, introduce myself. We chat a little bit because we have a mutual friend. And that's how him and I started our relationship. And I notice him talking to a guy that's not going to get drafted. And he's talking about technique and about, when you go up and you jump and you hit the thing to see how high your high jump is or whatever. And he's talking to him about his technique. And him and I walked out of the building together that day. And I said, "Mike, I got to ask you a question. The kid isn't even going to get drafted. He's not going to play one game in the NFL. He doesn't matter. What? Why did you do that?" And he looked at me and goes, "He doesn't matter." I go, "Well, not to you." He goes, "You don't think he's going to remember the rest of his life that all those NFL coaches were there and I stopped and helped him?" I said, "Yeah, but he's never going to play for you." He goes, "Yeah, but he'll be a Steeler fan the rest of his life." He got it. And I mean, he just got it. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've reminded him of that. That's Tomlin. He just cares about people. He generally, for a guy that doesn't care what people think, and he does not, by the way, he cares about people. And I heard him say one time, this was years later, but talking about that kid at Michigan State, he goes, "People matter, man. People matter." And he's the first one that I really heard say it who I believed it. Because they don't remember what I said. They remember how I made them feel.
Well, I mean, when you look at the impact that this guy had, it's gonna sprinkle out and carry over for a long, long time. And when you look at his last message to the team, which included, per the athletics reporting, "I want it to be better for you guys because I care so much about you guys." When he finished that, everybody rises for a standing ovation. Multiple players with tears in their eyes. And then, of course, doing the Tomlin thing, going to the door and giving everybody a personal exchange and a hug on the way out. There's no doubt that that was something that he thought of, that he planned for, that he designed. And when you look at his overall career in Pittsburgh, he never big timed anybody. in a city and in a team that really wants that ideally. That's kind of the idea of the Steelers is we are the Steelers. We are one. We are humble. We are driven. We are dedicated. We're going forward as a unit. And it was really a perfect match. And as great a job as he did, you've got to give some credit to the Steelers for making that hire at the time because, you know, it's a 1 out of however many they interviewed, maybe 1 out of 10 or 20 chance to identify him with such a short period of time in Minnesota and get it right was something else. And Tomlin just delivered. He delivered every single year. There was no year that he took off. There was no year that they just kind of went boom. There was no year that he got sour enough and got a bad attitude or big timed guys. How many coaches in your phone right now, Hondo, that you've known for a long time, maybe got to a point in their career where all of a sudden they got over it, they soured, they started big timing people, and their career kind of went here and there. This is the complete opposite. This is a guy that when you think of football is about as pure as it gets. And we're not here to butter the guy up. I don't think he's anywhere near done. I wish he was coming back immediately. But as soon as next fall, we'll start to hear if there's some interest and maybe some ideas. I hope he only comes back for exactly the kind of organizational fit that he wants. And I'm very confident that that's what he's going to do. Let's just say, I'm not trying to make fun, but I don't think he's going to go to a Carolina based university, for example. I think he's going to end up in a really good spot when he returns.
And he's going to be able to pick it. I will say one more thing about Mike Tomlin, because anybody that watches this podcast, we've talked about him all the time for years. I have great respect for him. When I was a college reporter and he had nothing to gain, he treated me with the same level of respect as now I'm a senior NFL reporter. And that just was Mike. And I'm going to say this to you, to anyone, and I don't care what anybody thinks. If I was an owner, that's the guy I'd want running my team. If he was young and not married, he's the guy I want my daughter to marry. I have not one ill word to say about Mike Tomlin, and I've had a ton of interactions with him. I just think the world of him. All right, let's move on.
Well, let
I'm
me
sorry, go
throw
ahead.
one last wild card. I know it'll never happen, but wouldn't it be neat if all of a sudden Mike Tomlin was announced to be the next commissioner of the NFL? It's a dream. It's way too big, but that's a
I'm
dream.
going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why it makes too much sense. Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly why it makes too much sense. Because he loves this league, and he would look at owners who don't, and he would look at players who don't, and he'd slap them, and he'd say, "We got to look out for the league." There's a new book out. I've talked about it on this podcast. I am not a paid endorser. It was recommended to me. Matter of fact, John, give me your address. Text me your address. I'm going to buy you a copy of the book. It was recommended to me in Houston by an NFL executive. It's called The League. It's the story of how the NFL really found its footing. Phenomenal book. Probably the greatest football book. The only other one would be the unauthorized biography of Saban, which I thought was brilliant. But it's a phenomenal book on the history of the NFL and about how decisions were made by the Maras, the Rooneys, the Hallases, how decisions were made for the league that hurt individual teams but benefited the league. And I've said this many, many times. There used to be a rule in baseball where you could make decisions, the commissioner could, based on the best interest of baseball, and the owners had to follow and the players had to follow. I don't trust Roger Goodell, and not because he's Roger, but because I don't trust the owners to make a decision for the best interest of the league. I don't trust the Players Association. There is no league anymore where I trust anybody to make the best decision for the league. And Mike Tomlin loves the NFL. And Mike Tomlin would come in and fix it right now. He'd look at the owners where they're wrong. he would look at them and say, "What are you doing? 18 games? You don't want to expand the roster?" Then he would look at players and say, "Really? You want this few of practices? You really think you want all this money, but the first 4 games of the season suck?" I mean, he would fix it, John. That's brilliant. Never that I could not have thought of something better. All right, that John Harbaugh move. We were the first to report that John was on the hot seat back in September on this show. In October, talking with Matt Haladik from Men's Journal, I told Matt I was what we had talked about in September and said I'm hearing the Giants should be a front runner. I think the hiring of John Harbaugh was brilliant. You're going to give him the money, the length, the power he needs. The Giants are an iconic NFL franchise. The Steelers, this is what I have. I have Giants, Steelers, Cowboys, Raiders. Okay. You can make an argument for a couple other teams, but they're only argument. Those 4 are locks. Okay, those 4. You can make an argument for the Washington franchise. You can make an argument for the New England franchise. You can make an argument for the Green Bay franchise, but they're not locks. Those 4 are locks. Anyways, quickly, when you look at them, the Giants, NFL's better when the G-men are good. And they are always good when they have strong leaders. You now go get John Harbaugh. There were things that happened in Baltimore that John didn't agree with. He eventually took the fall for it because he wouldn't let others take a fall for it wasn't their fault or him. Stuck to his guns, lands in New York. In the interest of full disclosure, which makes all my Spartan fans mad, I love the Harbaughs. Going back to their dad, I love Joni, Tom, John, Jimmy, all of them. Love them. Love the parents. Love the whole darn family. They're wonderful people. This was a great move by the G-men, and I'm happy for John. Your thoughts?
Yes, all those things don't make so much sense. It's not if they, Tomlin level job, Harbaugh level job. That's where the Giants should be. So we talked a bit about evaluating these jobs. The quarterback, the owner, they both check out. They both check out, and this is not a money concern. It's not a money concern at all for John Harbaugh. Who cares? But they've got it right. So I want to see him help to fix the field situation there, so we don't have any more MetLife Stadium field issues, which I'm sure he's going to get on. And I think it's interesting as this is filtering down, we are understanding, to his credit, some of what we saw Joel Shane doing in Hard Knocks off season that almost looked like an office episode of The Office. Some of what we saw was a guy that to his core is a supportive nature. So he is going to help redefine the general manager role there as somewhat more supportive than the old-fashioned dictatorial, here's the guys you've got to go deal with. This is interesting. This makes a lot of sense for Harbaugh, who still wants to coach and is phenomenal at doing it. It's going to be interesting to see who he brings along, who he might add, and what he does with Jackson Dart to send him off to the next level. It is a compressed quarterback development scale now, isn't it? The Giants are going to want a whole lot more out of Jackson Dart in year 2 than maybe generations past. You would be looking at that might be a year 3 or year 4 thing. This is not a bad thing because the pressure that will be applied is not a bad pressure. It's a pressure based on success. What an amazing scene from how close the Ravens were to a couple of Super Bowl appearances to now John Harbaugh starting all over. But what a phenomenal day for the Giants. What a phenomenal day for the Giants. All of a sudden, all the credibility of Big Blue is back there. And we're going to find out that they've maybe got some players who have a lot higher ceiling than we've seen so far, which is not a knock necessarily on Dable or a coordinator. It's the whole big picture. It's the incredible value of having a Hall of Fame level coach who is in the middle of his prime, who has all the tools and resources to do what he wanted to do. It may look a whole lot like Baltimore, but remember, folks, Baltimore looked a whole lot different in between the Harbaugh era. Remember when they ran the ball like nobody else? And then all of a sudden they flipped the switch and they were going ahead and throwing it a lot more? It's an incredibly exciting time for the NFL to have one of those absolute cornerstone franchises back on the map and the excitement that the Giants will bring is going to, again, set the NFL up for what feels like we're in a transition right now when we see teams doing what they're doing, and who's in and who's out, and who's in major change. Bringing the Giants back into the fold, it's not good for the other teams in the NFC East, but it's phenomenal for the power and the growth. Yeah, still the growth of the NFL going forward.
Who do you have as the Mount Rushmore
Well,
of franchises?
what you're talking about, I think there is current. You would have, without any question, you would have had Washington up there a couple decades ago. But the damage Dan Snyder did, you probably pull them out. There's some people that are always going to have Green Bay there because of the foundation of the league and Lombardi. There's even some people that would say that the Browns should be there just because of Paul Brown, but it's like, well, I mean, boy, you're really kind of reaching there. The only thing I would probably quibble with is, yes, you're going to have two of the teams, at least in the NFC East. The 49ers have an argument to make. They do, but I'm not sure that, yeah, there is an East Coast bias that's already built in. There just is. So they're going to kind of be forgotten about. The only one I would probably consider adding would be Green Bay, but some of that feels a little distant. And if you're going to drop Washington, you probably have to drop them. The Raiders, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Giants, and then the fifth one is a little tricky to put a finger on. But in the same way, if you ask
You're
someone,
like me. You're like me. The four are locks.
they
When you
are.
look at Cowboys, Giants, Steelers,
Yeah.
Raiders, number five is the one that's up for debate. If there
I,
is a fifth. And to me, when you're looking at a Mount Rushmore, it's like the Hall of Fame. If you got to debate it, you're out.
well, here's the thing. Then I'd probably expand it a little bit because if Mount Rushmore had more heads on it, we would all have a different frame of reference, right? So I would add probably the 49ers, the Washington, and Green Bay. And if we're forgetting somebody, listen, I love the Broncos, and there's a bunch of other people, and sure, the Chiefs may be up there one day. But we're talking about the names that transcend the sport and go beyond. And right now, there is a push for the Kansas City Chiefs to transcend the sport. We all know that. That's probably going on. How will it stick? It's going to take a decade or so to find out, right? It's going to take a decade or so after some of these names are gone to find out. Same with the Patriots. But when you talk about the Packers, the 49ers, Washington, when you talk about those other franchises, I think that they probably stick. But hey, when you try to name five, sometimes it gets tough. I'll give you a personal example. When I try to name the top five drummers of all time, I have no problem with the top four. And it took me like 15 years to figure out who I had in the fifth spot. So some of these things get tight. Some of them get tight.
So let me ask you a question real quick. Who are your where do you have Ted Nugent, a fellow Michiganian, and as guitarist? Come on, Stranglehold.
Oh yeah, his guitar work. Take out the guy, just taking the guitar. His guitar work is definitely on the top tier.
No,
I
I'm
would
just
think,
talking about guitars. I mean,
yeah,
his guitar.
he's in the top tier for sure. How big is the top tier? I haven't really thought about it for guitar, but there's probably 20 or so guitar. And listen, I know what some people out there are like, this guy doesn't know anything about football. You may be right, but I know even less about the music and rock music if you want to go down that road. He's in a top tier. His guitar work is top tier. Stranglehold and some of the other stuff really is top tier. His work is going to live so far beyond his time. So he is a transcendent guitar player. And even guys like Jack White from the neighborhood and other guys that, you know, probably don't even want to see Ted, they know how great his guitar work was. It's timeless. That's really the biggest thing that stands out to me. When we're talking tops of all time, the guys in the top tier, their work is timeless. And Ted Nugent's, without question, timeless guitar work. And supposedly a
All right,
decent
John.
hunter, but separate story.
I'm sorry. What?
He's supposedly a decent hunter, but that's a separate story.
He's a great hunter. Don't call him decent. All right. Listen, I got to tell you this before we keep going. We got a long ways to go. The other day, I don't remember what day it was, John. I don't remember if it was Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't remember what day it was. I don't know. I made a joke on the podcast. It's time to turn the page like Bob Seger. Okay. I get multiple emails. What are you talking about? Who's Bob Seger? What do you mean turn the page? In the same podcast, I mentioned Star Trek, the Genesis Project. And I made a reference, okay, I'm showing my age. John, what is going on with our I mean, I'm older than you, but
Yep.
how do people not know Bob Seger? Turn the page.
It's a little painful. I don't know. We've seen Bob Seger as recently as when the, but you know what? It was like 15 years ago when the Tigers made their great run. He was out there. I don't know. Not everybody. You know what it is? It's very. I guess it's as simple as there was a time when rock music was pop music. It was at the top of the pop charts, and those days are gone. And Bob's music, a lot of it is absolutely timeless, and it will come back up. And we've seen bands like Metallica obviously cover Turn the Page and get it back on radio and in front of people's faces. Somebody else has to do it soon. But that is kind of funny. It's just a reminder that for
I'm
us,
old.
yeah, everything's the same, right? Like I still got records right there. It's all the same, but we forget how much of the audience is totally disconnected, doesn't know about it. It starts to shock me too. I think it's a nice sign that those of us out there who remember a number of Bob Seger tunes or still have Bob Seger ticket stubs. Yeah, we've put some miles on the calendar.
Next time we're talking privately, I've got remind me to tell you my greatest Bob Seger story. I've got a ton of them because obviously I've worked in media in Michigan a long time, and he's a huge sports fan. But I'll tell you my greatest Bob Seger story that I will never tell until he dies. When he dies, I'll tell everyone the story. I've got a ton of them. I could do an entire podcast, but I'll tell you one in particular. All right, John, let's talk about the Jags because I think they're going to have to spend a lot of time this offseason. I love this organization and the direction it's going. Shad Khan is an underrated owner. I think Liam Cohen was a tremendous job. I love the leadership. I love that Tony Baselli's involved. That's why I don't have a problem with Tom Brady involvement. But one of the things that really stood out to me, John, and really hit me was I thought it was not smart the way that they used Travis Hunter. I we all kind of knew this is an injury looking for a place to happen. Give me your thoughts. And do they? I know that Travis came out saying, I want to play both sides, but at some point they're going to have to say, listen, we love you, Travis. We've invested a lot of money in you. You're not doing both ways, or maybe in the playoffs, but we can't have you in week 3 playing Carolina. Help me out here, John.
Yes, so this is we all know the Jags went all in. They made the trade to get Travis Hunter. They drafted him at the top. He's going to play both ways, out for the season with a knee injury. So he's starting to work back in rehab. And last week here, the Jags have said at this time they still intend Travis Hunter to play both ways. They've got to think about this really hard as an organization. Players play. They want to play. That's what you want them to do. They've got to figure out a way to manage this asset. And it does strike some people that you might have thought they would start with Hunter and bring him along and then bring him up to playing both ways and then take it down later in his career. Instead, they start why we're just going to start redlining this engine and it already fails. There are overuse injuries. Perhaps the torn ACL that he had or the knee issues he had is one of them. It's possible that we saw one in the making with George Kittle last week. The reason I say that is George Kittle, when his Achilles blew, he looked 0% surprised. And a lot of guys wear that down and then it gets over to a point like they kind of know it's going to go versus the guys that it just surprises them and goes. So if you're the Jags, my point is you're going to set Travis Hunter up to be more likely to get overuse injuries and get serious injuries when you're essentially nearly doubling his snap count. Is that the best thing for the Jaguars as it appears that they are entering a nice window where they can build some progress, build some success, and hopefully make a run at a Super Bowl? This is an interesting story to watch in the Low Country because they've got to figure out what to do. And I realize that what they say right now doesn't matter very much, but who they sign, who they draft does potentially matter. I don't know if they have enough out of Travis Hunter yet to know, can he be an all pro level wide receiver? Can he be an all pro level cornerback? And or can he just be a starter on both ends? What do they make of this talent? They've already got one serious injury, which makes you think that you don't want to get another one, let alone here in a couple of years. Or this kid's going to be tagged as a bust and it's not going to be his fault at all. And he's not going to be a bust. He was just maybe not put in the best position. So we've got a really young GM who went all in to get him. It kind of blew up. The Jags have a great season. They apparently have uncovered a phenomenal head coach in the making. This transition for the offseason right now in Jacksonville to when Hunter sees the field again is going to really be something. And I'm immediately curious, are they just going to redline the thing with him when he comes back? Or are they going to bring him along and gradually build up his snap count and figure out what they want to do with him? They need a really good plan to feature the best of Travis Hunter and keep him fresh enough to be very, very effective versus a watered down version who's on the field too much, gets worn down, gets a number of overuse injuries, and doesn't look anything like the second pick in the draft.
Let's talk about the Jets, okay? They take Sam Darnold in 18, Zach Wilson in 21, the Sanchez in 09, Pennington in 2000. I know for a fact, and have already reported it, that Dante Moore's camp looked at the fact about being a Jet. Okay? I'm just saying to you, is there a franchise who does a worse job of handling quarterbacks than the Jets?
Doesn't look like it. First of all, it looks like they misevaluate them. Chad Pennington around the 18th pick of the draft, that seems reasonable, right? Mark Sanchez was probably bought into the best position to succeed, that back-to-back AFC title games, probably pretty good. But Darnold, did he ever have any chance? First of all, he came out a year too early. He wouldn't have come out, I don't think, in the NIL era. And they didn't set him up for a position to succeed. They set him up in position to just blow out his entire career. He's done a great job just to save it. And we're looking forward to seeing what he does in a monster game, of course, this weekend. And then Zach Wilson. Why was Zach Wilson drafted where he was? When you look at what the Jets need as an organization, they consistently seem sometimes to lose the big picture. So they've got this unbelievable defense, and they kind of wrestle with their head coach, and they bring in Rodgers, and they bring in Rodgers' coordinator, and that thing goes in flames. And there's a surprise Achilles. Obviously, wasn't an overuse. It's the first game of the year. Surprise Achilles injury. So the Jets, they consistently can't get the quarterback thing right. And I know there's some old timers out there that remember, Vinny Testaverde was effective when Parcells was there. Yes. And Ray Lucas had some good time. Yes. But there's such a long line of bad Jet quarterbacks that there is something bigger going on. There is something with the ready, fire, aim Jet way. So when I look at what they've got here, I like the position that they're in with the draft picks that they have. I really hope Aaron Glenn has an outstanding voice in them and that they can keep the owner completely separated from it. Because if you're a quarterback in this draft, whether you're going in the first round or whether you're going the second day, I don't know if you want to hear the Jets call your name. It would temper the excitement. You've got the excitement, the dream of a lifetime, but it's going to temper it already because you're going so far uphill. And when Kirk Cousins was a free agent and the Jets were in the mix, you're like, oh God, no. Anybody that you want, anybody that you cheer for as a quarterback, you don't want them going to the Jets. Their record is very poor with the quarterback position. So maybe they need to retool and think, let's literally not try to force feed a signing of a quarterback or a draft pick of a quarterback because the record is horrible. In the last 10 years, it's not good. And it's not one coach or one GM. It's something to do with the franchise. We think we know where it starts. And Dante Moore, my hat goes off to Dante Moore. This is a guy that obviously Hondo knows quite well his story. He decides he doesn't want to be in the Big Ten country and he's going to go out west. This is in his high school career. He's got coaching changes. Maybe he's going to come back and play in a Big Ten school all over the place. He finds his footing this year, and we see some good quarterback play. There's still some work to do, but I want to look at this in a couple of years. I think he showed a sign of professional wisdom by doing what he could to avoid going to the Jets, because that's how bad it has been for so many of these careers. I don't It would be shocking to me if Zach Wilson comes back and is a productive starter in the NFL. I didn't think he was ready to go in the first place. And Sam Darnold, how many years did he have to work to overcome essentially being drafted by the Jets?
All right, John, let's get right to it. For everyone that doesn't know, John takes the most interesting games of the week in the playoffs. We just do all of the games and we make our picks and keep track. So, John, let's go, brother. Let's get into this week. We got 4 games. Let's make our picks.
Yes, and as Hondo knows, and some of the folks maybe know who've been with us, this to me is the best week of the year. This to me traditionally grabs the passion and excitement of college football and the precision and proficiency of pro football. This to me is my favorite weekend for football of the year without any question. We are going to start with a game that has to have a home field advantage. Sean Payton has called for it. We're talking about the Bills at the Broncos, 1 Mile High.
John, I love Josh Allen. I think the issues with the Bills are nothing to do with Josh. Okay? I think Sean Payton is a fantastic coach. This game, as you know, every game I predict, I've got 10 criterion. And when it's tied, I always go with the home team. So I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea. I don't pay attention to the odds because I'll tell everyone why. I don't think there's anything wrong with gambling or betting on games. It's not immoral or anything, none of that. Just because of what I do for a living, it would be immoral for me to bet on games because I cover the National Football League. And since I don't do it and I don't mention it in my reporting, I have no idea. If I were a Vegas odds maker, and I don't even know what these odds are, I would have it Denver by 1 point just because it's at home, because I have it tied 5-5. So I'm going to go with Denver. If this was in Buffalo, I would pick the Bills. It's not, I mean, to me, this is going to be the most competitive game of the weekend. Now watch, it won't be, but I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos here.
Well, you're pretty close. By my read, it looks like the spread is 1.5. So you're right on there. This is one to me where all 60 minutes count, but they mean more for the Broncos. I think the Broncos are built to run from the front. They've got to be ahead as often as they can for as long as they can. They can't afford to fall way behind here. They don't have an offense built to come back, but I believe they've got a defense built for an edge. I want to see what Sean Payton does with the bye week. We've seen teams, sometimes number 1 seeds, come out and fall on their face in this divisional round after the bye week. I don't think that happens here. I like the Broncos only because I think their defense for some reason is a little bit undervalued, and the Bills' problems, they probably show up here. This one should be phenomenal. We both have the Broncos. Now, the 49ers and Seahawks, again, best division in the sport as it was a couple years ago. Weather possibly an issue in Seattle. You never really know. The 49ers, whoever's left, they're up there. I mean, this is, it's like, you look at their starting roster from day one and you look who's left. It's like, whoo, is there any chance that Kyle Shanahan has another rabbit in a hat that he can pull out here?
So let me pull out another Bob Seger Star Trek. Everyone asking me, what am I talking about? I expect to see Hot Lips Houlihan, Hawkeye, BJ, Radar, Klinger, and all those guys to come out because San Francisco is a mash unit. They just don't have enough. I'm going with the Seahawks at home, and I think a relatively easy win. When I say easy, 8 points. I just don't think if San Francisco was not a mash unit, I would think they would win this. I don't even think it would be in Seattle, but it is in Seattle. They're beat up. I don't see any way San Francisco wins it.
You know, the irony here, we talked about how much the 49ers were playing for a couple weeks ago and how much they lost. And it's too obvious to say, well, Kittle wouldn't have blown out his Achilles if they were at home last week in a bye week. But that final game and what it cost them is already growing in stature. This week, I don't think the 49ers have enough. I like the Seahawks by about 4. And oh, by the way, I'm going to have my eye on Jackson Smith in Jigba. Should be great. The 12s
You
are
know,
back.
I cannot tell you the number of people. I actually had an NFL guy say to me, "What is his fantasy with that guy?" He goes, "Every week he brings him up."
It just, to see a guy, you think this is a guy that can actually be outstanding at the top of the sport. And to see it happen, it's so rare that we get one of those right. I gotta continue to take that flag and run it around that 12
I
situation.
have to tell you how I described you this week to somebody. So an NFL guy asked me about your love of him, and I said to him, "Have you ever watched the show The West Wing?" It was a great political show. If you like politics, it didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat. It was just a good political show. I said, John is Josh Lyman. He's the smartest guy in every room. And he always comes up with some name or fact. And I said, that is just John. It is his attorney, analytical nature. So I want you to know my buddy, and I'll tell you what team he works for this week, started calling you Josh Lyman. So there you go. If you did you ever see that show, The West Wing?
Yes, I've got two parents that have watched it like 5 times, so I couldn't avoid it. They love it. Yes. Yes. Now, we know about the Texans and the Patriots, and some of us have some ideas in our mind that the Seahawks are going to play whoever wins this game in the Super Bowl. Some of us have talked and have thought and have said, wait a minute, is it possible that the Patriots could be back this quickly, or is it possible that the
Wait,
Texans have arrived?
wait, wait. You've already got the Seahawks in the Super Bowl?
It's possible. A couple weeks back, a couple weeks, maybe third or fourth week before the end of the year, I thought, wait a second. You know what it was? The week that I said, in reality, when you step back and you look at the NFL, it's more likely that you are arriving ahead of schedule than it is you're building some kind of a dynasty. That's
Good
when I
point.
thought, what if it is the Texans and the Seahawks that are already arriving and we don't even realize it? We don't realize it. When I see what the Texans did, we all saw what they did to Pittsburgh, including Mike Vrabel. Now, can they stop it? I don't know. Will Anderson and company are the serious, real thing. We know what Stroud did with the ball last week. Not going to happen this week. I think that the magic number to watch is the turnovers. I know that sounds super obvious, but the Texans are going to close the game out. If they're in position to do it, I think the Texans are going to close it out. I am riding with Houston here ahead of schedule to send the Patriots home with a fantastic season, but also to remind the AFC that this is the next franchise coming.
I am a huge believer in D'Amico. I'm a huge believer in the Houston Texans, but Mike Vrabel is elite. I love what Josh McDaniels, listen, not a good head coach, the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. I love what he's done with Drake May. I mean, you look at the impact he had on Tom Brady. You look at the impact he had on Mac Jones, coaching him one year, puts him as an all pro. The next year, they're ready to give him away. You look at what he's done with Drake May. But you go to Spills, Robert Spillane, who Mike Vrabel can't stop bragging about with his defense, who the Raiders let walk away, who wanted to be a Raider. I'm out there, Jerry. Who wanted to be a Raider. I wonder how many people don't get that joke. Wanted to be a Raider. Listen, I think Houston is a year away. And I think they're a year away because I think they've got some young pieces. I think D'Amico is still learning how to be a great head coach. I think he is a great head coach. But I think there'll be a coaching decision by Vrabel that is the difference in this game. I'm going with the Patriots, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm just going to tell you, I love me some Houston Texans, and I think they are a team on the rise that may be peaking at the wrong time. Remember when The Pistons, the bad boys, were peaking, and then there were the Lakers and the Celtics, and then there were Jordan and the Bulls. I think this may be one of those times that it's a bad time for the Texans to be peaking, but I'm a buyer. I'm a buyer, and I think whoever wins this one will probably be going to a Super Bowl.
But you're taking New England this time. Yeah, I mean, look, Mike Vrabel, he's a great coach. You could see that he was a great coach in Tennessee. You could see the remarkable organizational failure to let him go in Tennessee, and then his decision to stay quiet and then get on a sideline and then get back in. I'm not sure. Well, we know when Mike Tomlin comes back on the market, that's as good as it gets. But Mike Vrabel is really the best head coach that was on the market for the second time around in a good while, and it's amazing.
Can you imagine this one? So there was a report that Mark Davis did not want Mike Vrabel because he didn't want to go back to the Patriot way. Now, I've not confirmed that with Mark, but can you imagine if it's accurate? And because of the reporter who reported it that I know and respect, I believe it was truthful. So I'm not saying I don't believe it, just saying I haven't confirmed it. Can you imagine Mark Davis sitting here after firing Pete Carroll after 1 year thinking, what if? Mike
No.
Vrabel, game changer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a John Harbaugh. I mean, there are just such a few of these guys, but you see it in college, you see it in the NFL, where one coach can make such a huge difference. I think you and I both.
It was the natural. There was nobody that more embodied what the Raiders wanted to be than Mike Vrabel. It shocked me that they didn't go to him right away. It shocked me that they let New England have a look. I didn't have him associated with the Patriot way because he was his own coach in Tennessee for years and wildly successful. It did shock me. I don't think there's a job that Mike Vrabel can't have success with. He could have success in Jacksonville. He could have success at the University of Washington, University of Miami, Ohio State, anywhere across this sport. He is a phenomenal mind and mentality and manager. Yeah, to me, this is a home run. To be honest with you, if you had John Harbaugh available and Mike Vrabel available last year, I would have wanted Mike Vrabel for my team just because I think that
I agree.
Hunger is this guy is so hungry to win. It's spreading out all over the place. And he knows what he's doing. So I thought the Patriot Way thing was not even a consideration in my objective mind because he had already gone to Tennessee and done his own thing. It's fascinating. And I hate to say it, Raider fans. Yes, you may be kicking that one around in your mind for years to come. Hopefully not, but you may be. I can understand it and grant you that. The Rams at the Bears is our final game. We know weather will be an issue. We know it will be cold and potentially blustery. But I would put this note out there to you. The Bears, the magic number is 2 turnovers. The Bears need to create 2 turnovers or more to have any chance this week.
I need to stop you. Are you talking about being +2 or just creating 2? So meaning if Caleb throws 2 interceptions and Matthew does, you're still saying that's the key, or it needs to be +2?
+2. They've got to get 2 turnovers or more to have any shot. What they did last week was great, but let's be honest. That doesn't happen if Micah Parsons is there, and Green Bay let that one get away as much or more than Chicago won. So it's an uphill battle for the Bears. Do they have any shot to keep this magic going?
So let me say something to you. You know this. I have said this since before he left Detroit. Every single person I know who knows Ben Johnson loves the guy. Okay? But there were a lot of concerns that he wouldn't be able to transition to being a head coach. Several people told me everybody loves Josh McDaniels, not a head coach. That they felt, I had one executive tell me, I think the Raiders dodged a bullet because I think Ben Johnson is a great guy, a great coordinator, probably not going to be a great head coach. In year 1, He's clearly been a great head coach. Let's give him all due respect. And I said at the time when the Raiders didn't get him, I'm rooting for him. I always laugh. I wrote this article, and one executive said Raiders dodged the bullet. And somebody sitting in his mom's basement, oh, this didn't age well. It aged fine. It's only been 1 year. And I said from day one, great guy. I hope he wins. I love to see good people win. That being said, listen, I don't believe in Caleb. It's a lot to me like Sean Ryan masks Bo Nix's weaknesses. I think Ben Johnson's done a very good job masking Caleb Williams' weaknesses. I like Bo Nix more than I like Caleb Williams. And I'm a firm believer in the Rams. The weather's not going to matter. I mean, Devontae's used to Green Bay. Matthew Stafford, even though it's a dome, lived in Michigan. It's not going to matter. Sean McVay is elite, probably the second best head coach in the NFL behind only Andy Reid. I think the Rams go up and get the win.
Montez Sweat is a guy to watch. Montez Sweat is a
My
guy.
guy, Tez.
Yeah, I mean, but the Bears need so many things to go right, and they need Caleb Williams to continue to do amazing things after the plays break down. Do they have another comeback win in them? No, you're not going to have. You're not going to. I don't think they're going to come back against the Rams. So the Bears have to stay with them or be up front to have much of a chance. It just seems like this is where the difference shines through with Sean McVay, the experience, the pedigree, the fact that the Rams, most of them or many of them, have been in his care, led by Sean McVay and his assistants. The Rams are just a little bit better at this point, unless they do get a turnover edge of 2 or more. If you look at the Bears statistics when they're +2 in turnovers, they look really good. I don't think there's any chance in the world that the Rams will go into that game not understanding the importance of ball security. So it's going to be really tough for the Bears. It's going to be really tough. They need some breaks. They need some weather. They need some doinks, if you will, off of the crossbar and off of the field goal post. I like the Rams also. This is the best week of the year. I look forward to it every year. This is football at its finest. We are stoked for these divisional playoff games.
So, John, we only disagreed on one again.
Only one again. Now, last week I was able to ride the Bills just by 3 points, which was interesting.
Who cares? A win's a win.
Oh, I thrilled as could be. Thrilled as could be. These are interesting games because, sometimes we see 3 out of 4 home team win on this weekend. Sometimes maybe it's even been 4 out of 4. This week, it feels like we're lining up for a split. So who knows what the football gods have in for us. I hope they're tight as could be. We're going to see some great home field environments starting in Denver and ending in Soldier Field. This is as good as the sport gets.
So, John, I got to tell you, we're going to have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday football, baby.
Now, on Monday night, we might as well talk about it. Look, folks, we're watching Hoosiers in real time. There's no stopping this thing. This is going to end with an Indiana victory. This is one of the most amazing stories in American pro sports history. We're going to have to tell kids in decades to come, no. Hoosiers was a movie about basketball. Indiana used to be a basketball state.
Yeah.
This is wild. This is not going to stop. I'm going to ride with Indiana.
Of course, but I've got to tell you a funny story. It's so for anybody that doesn't know, we don't have a meeting to discuss what we're going to talk about because we like this to be we feel like we're inviting thousands of you to just sit in a room and watch us behind a glass talk sports, 2 guys at a bar. I had a guy tell me last night that this is the biggest sports story since the movie Hoosiers. And I thought, isn't that ironic? I mean, that is a great way of looking at this, isn't it? It's phenomenal.
It is. I mean,
and Kurt Signetti, I mean, what he's doing is redefining the game of college football. When you look at, I mean, Miami is full of 5 and 4 stars. Indiana's full of 1 stars, 2 stars. I got to tell you, amazing. Listen, there are some great players that have developed on this Indiana roster, but I was talking to a very successful head coach that you and I both know, guy that's, won conference championships, very successful college coach. And he said, "You want to know what amazes me?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "Coming out of high school," he goes, "I don't even know that there's 10 guys on their roster I would have recruited." And he wasn't bragging about him. He was telling me this is how good of a job Signetti's done.
It really is shocking because it happened last year and you're like, okay, there's usually traditionally in college, there's the first year boost where you've got the attention of the players, the buy-in. They tend to overperform in the first year of a new coach, but that was just the start. It really is shocking to watch. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't miss a lot of assignments. They don't get a lot of confusion. And you're trying to put together, like, how could this be going on? Well, they do have some older players. Perhaps there's an advantage there that we're underestimating. The continuity of the staff that he has makes you think that when you go to an Indiana practice, like, they've really refined and mastered how to teach their message, how to coach it, how to they've somehow got a way where what they want their players to do and what they do matches up tremendously. We've seen, obviously, Raider fans have seen a mismatch between coordination and roster. They don't have any of that. It's shocking. We are seeing one of the great American sports stories of all time play out, and the coaching. This has got to be studied. This has got to be studied. People, they've got to try to figure out, what is this guy doing? What are these folks doing that is so proficient? It doesn't look, folks, Indiana was not good for decade after decade after decade after decade. It wasn't even close. They had Antoine Randall. They had some fantastic individual players. Other than a decent season during the shortened COVID year, which, like, okay, but this is just out of this world. And the story is unbelievable. And there's so many things to like about Signetti. He reminds some people of Mark D'Antonio, who coached in the Big Ten. He reminds some people of Nick Saban in a little bit of a way. There is something that they are doing at Indiana that is captivating, that is really kind of bigger than the sport. And that's why this story is exploding. And just the wildest thing is, it's the 50-year anniversary for that perfect basketball team in Indiana. And they literally made a movie called Hoosiers. And now we're watching almost the real thing in football. It's just out of this world. This train can't stop. It's got to keep going.
I'm going to tell everyone a story about how bad Indiana football was. So years ago on my TV show, I traveled all over the Big Ten, interviewing all the Big Ten coaches in their offices. And, we, in the off season, went there, interviewed all the Big Ten football coaches. And I'm sitting there with one of them, and we were looking ahead to the next season. And he's looking at his schedule, and he goes, "Well, that's a win. It's Indiana. I'll be able to play some backups there." And he goes, "Can you edit that out of the interview, because it wasn't, it was taped to live?" I'm like, "Sure." I mean, but that's how even other Big Ten coaches looked at Indiana. It was like, "Oh, that's a win. Yeah, we'll be able to play backups there." It just, that's how far it's come. It's going to be a great time Monday night. Look forward to talking to you next weekend. Johnny, tell everybody where to find you on Twitter.
At JP Spartan.
All right, football games today.